It starts with a question that sounds simple, but carries decades of chaos, fame, heartbreak, and redemption behind it. After a life filled with supermodels, backstage excess, and headline-making romances, who was the one person that truly mattered to Slash? Not the faces splashed across magazine covers. Not the fleeting passions that burned fast and faded even faster. At 59, the legendary guitarist finally revealed the answer, and it wasn't what anyone expected. For years, Slash embodied the ultimate rock and roll fantasy. The top hat, the cigarette dangling from his lips, the guitar screaming through sold-out arenas. His life moved at full speed, loud, reckless, and unapologetically wild. Women came and went like encores at the end of a show, each more glamorous than the last. But beneath the image, beneath the chaos, there was a story that ran much deeper than fame and excess. A story that began long before the lights, the noise, and the legend. Before he became Slash, he was Saul Hudson, a restless kid trying to find his place in a world that never felt entirely stable. Born in London in 1965, his early life was far from the chaos that would later define him. But that calm didn't last. At just 6 years old, he moved to Los Angeles, a city that would shape his future in ways he couldn't yet understand. It wasn't just a change of scenery, it was a complete shift in identity, culture, and direction. His upbringing was anything but ordinary. His mother was a fashion designer who worked with some of the biggest names in music, while his father was an artist connected to the same creative world. From an early age, Saul was surrounded by talent, ambition, and the unpredictable energy of the entertainment industry. But instead of providing stability, it often created distance. His parents separated, and he found himself moving between homes, searching for something solid to hold on to. That instability turned him into what he would later describe as a problem child. School didn't interest him. Structure didn't suit him. He had energy, frustration, and nowhere to put it, but everything changed in a moment that seemed almost accidental. At 14, he found himself in a situation that could have easily become just another teenage memory. But instead, it became the turning point of his life. Sitting in a room, music playing in the background, something clicked. It wasn't the environment or the people, it was the sound. The guitar hit him in a way nothing else ever had. In that instant, everything else faded away. He didn't care about anything except that sound, that feeling, that connection. He left that moment behind with a new obsession. Music wasn't just interesting, it was everything. It gave him direction. It gave him purpose. And most importantly, it gave him an escape. From that point on, he threw himself into learning guitar with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Hours turned into entire days of practice. His fingers blistered, his hands ached, but he didn't stop. He didn't want to stop. While other teenagers were still figuring out who they were, he had already found the one thing that made sense. By the time he entered the Los Angeles music scene, he wasn't just another aspiring musician. He was driven by something deeper. He joined bands, experimented with sounds, and chased opportunities that could bring him closer to something bigger. And then everything changed again. In the mid-1980s, he became part of a band that would redefine rock music, Guns N' Roses. What started as a group of raw, unfiltered talent quickly turned into a cultural force. Their music wasn't polished or safe. It was loud, dangerous, and real. Songs exploded with energy, rebellion, and emotion. Audiences didn't just listen, they felt it. Their debut album didn't just succeed, it dominated. It shattered expectations, broke records, and turned them into global icons almost overnight. Slash's guitar work became legendary, his style instantly recognizable, his presence impossible to ignore. He wasn't just playing music anymore. He was defining an era. But with that success came something darker. The same intensity that fueled their music began to spill into their lives. Drugs, alcohol, endless touring, it all became part of the routine. What once felt like freedom slowly turned into something far more dangerous. The line between control and chaos started to blur. At the height of his fame, Slash was living a life that many people romanticized. But behind the scenes, it was unraveling. Substance use wasn't just a habit, it became a dependency. Nights blurred into mornings. Moments disappeared into a haze. And more than once, he came dangerously close to losing everything. There were nights when his heart stopped, moments when his life hung by a thread, times when survival felt almost accidental. Yet somehow he kept going. From the outside, it looked like resilience. But in reality, it was a cycle that couldn't last forever. The turning point didn't come all at once. It came through a series of realizations, moments when the consequences became impossible to ignore. A diagnosis of heart failure at just 35 years old forced him to confront the reality of what he was doing to himself. Doctors didn't give him much time. His body was breaking down, and there was no escaping it. For a while, even that wasn't enough to stop him. The lifestyle had become part of his identity. Letting go of it meant redefining who he was, but eventually something shifted. In 2006, he made a decision that would change everything. He checked into rehab, not because he was forced to, but because he finally understood that if he didn't, there might not be another chance. It wasn't easy. It wasn't immediate, but it was real. Sobriety wasn't just about quitting substances. It was about rebuilding a life. It was about understanding the patterns that led him there in the first place. It was about learning how to exist without the chaos that had once defined him. And slowly, things began to change. Music was still there, but it felt different, clearer, more intentional. He continued to create, to perform, to evolve, but this time he was present, truly present. But the biggest transformation didn't come from his career. It came from something far more personal. Fatherhood. Becoming a father changed everything. For the first time, his choices didn't just affect him. There were two lives depending on him, watching him, learning from him. The stakes were different. The priorities shifted. The chaos that once felt normal no longer fit into this new reality. The late nights, the reckless decisions, the constant instability, they didn't belong anymore. What replaced them was something he had never truly experienced before. Responsibility, consistency, and a deeper kind of love. His relationships had always been complicated. Years of fleeting connections had left him searching for something real. And when he finally found it, it wasn't perfect, but it mattered. His marriage brought both stability and struggle. There were moments of strength, moments of support, and moments of conflict. They built a life together, raised children, faced challenges, but ultimately it didn't last. The separation was difficult, public, and emotionally charged. Yet even through that, something important remained: growth. Because after everything, the fame, the addiction, the heartbreak, he began to understand what he had been looking for all along. Not attention, not validation, not even romance in the way he once defined it, but something deeper, something lasting. Years later, he reconnected with someone from his past. This time, things were different. There was no chaos, no need for spectacle. The relationship was quieter, more grounded. It wasn't about proving anything to the world. It was about building something real away from the noise. And that's when the question finally comes full circle. After all the relationships, all the experiences, all the highs and lows, who was the love of his life? When asked directly, his answer was simple: his children. Not a dramatic declaration, not a poetic speech, just the truth. Because in the end, everything he went through, the rise, the fall, the survival, it all led to that realization. The kind of love that doesn't fade, the kind that doesn't depend on fame, attention, or circumstances. But if you look deeper, the story becomes more complex. Because there were two women who played significant roles in shaping the man he became. One stood beside him during his darkest moments, helping him survive when everything seemed to be falling apart. The other came into his life when the chaos had settled, offering something calm, steady, and real. Both mattered. Both left their mark. Both were part of the journey. But neither defined the final answer. Because the truth is, the greatest love of his life wasn't found in the spotlight or the headlines. It wasn't part of the chaos that once surrounded him. It was something quieter, stronger, unshakable, A love that gave him a reason to change, a reason to survive, a reason to become someone different than who he used to be. And maybe that's the real story. Not just about fame or music or relationships, but about transformation. About a man who had everything the world could offer, lost himself in it, and somehow found his way back. And, in the end, discovered that the most important things in life aren't the ones that make the most noise, but the ones that stay when everything else fades.